All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, the number one podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. This is episode 65. I'm your host, Christian Brindle. I'm joined with my co-host once again, Glenn Shelton. Good morning, good sir. Happy Monday.
Good morning. Good morning.
How was the weekend?
It was good. I kind of followed your lead there and drove 3 hours south. Went to Eugene this weekend.
There you go. Was there basketball games being played? Was there dribbling happening?
It was actually just to see my wife's brother. I was just visiting some family. Although the Ducks were playing, and I did try to persuade some folks to go, and it didn't happen. But here's the funny thing that happened is my 12-year-old found this podcast on YouTube and was making fun of me most of the weekend.
Found our podcast?
Yeah, he's falling out. Do you remember? I can't remember which episode it was, but we're like, it's the one where he talked about the Kyle Kuzma. They're like, did the Bucks? You're like, did the Bucks win the NBA trade deadline with Kyle Kuzma? He's just like, what is this?
Is this what you do when you say you're working?
He's like, he just talks about NBA all the time. Like, it's not an NBA podcast, okay?
That's funny, NBA. Kyle
That's
Kuzma.
the subcontext of the show, okay? Steph Curry dunked for the first time in 6 years this weekend.
And he said he probably won't do it again.
Did you see that?
Of course. Yeah.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
Of course. So a couple of things to start off the show. We're going to be talking about taxes today. Before we get into that, I find it important and responsible to let the audience know that we are not licensed tax professionals by any means, and this is intended for entertainment purposes only. So nothing we say should be executed without the approval of your CPA or tax professional. Now that I got that out of the way, we have tax information we're going to be talking about. But before we get into that, there's a couple of things I wanted to kind of start the show off with. First thing, I posted in the Facebook group a story, and I texted it to you as well, about an insurance executive's home being shot up. I think it was over the weekend, was it not?
It was Friday morning, or it was Friday or Thursday last week.
Friday or Thursday, right? And it was someone in Oregon. I don't think it was in the health insurance industry portion of things, but definitely very interesting. Is kind of like.
Was it a disgruntled employee? I read the article, but it was several days ago, so I'm kind of fuzzy on the details now. Was it a disgruntled employee?
I think so. I mean, it's an interesting thing because it got me thinking a little bit. Maybe it's a little ridiculous, but it got me thinking about, like, what if this becomes a new trend of normalcy for, important people in the insurance space. I mean, I don't work for a carrier by any means, but I consider myself an important person in the insurance space of sorts. So it gets me a little edgy. You know what I mean? Like,
here's the interesting part. So, am I personally concerned about this for my own safety or my family's safety or anything like that? No. None at all. Like, this doesn't even cross my mind. Like, in the grand scheme of things, I feel like I'm a nobody, right? Like,
sure.
As far as like someone trying to target me is almost like comedy to even to think about. But that being said, the interesting part about, what's happened before and what this article was talking about, and then, in our circles, there's some really, really, really successful people in the health insurance space.
Sure.
And recently, I've heard some people in our circles talking about this in the sense of, added security in the sense of home security systems, private security, getting like bodyguards. So this is having a real effect on professionals in our space. So I
Yeah.
think that's something that's really interesting to me is, you know, how far is this going to go? And you know, is this going to become, are we going to see more of this? Is this going to become a pattern of behavior that we're going to see among, you know, others in the industry? I don't know. It's wild to really speculate about.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. I mean, you know, I kind of feel the same way, you know, and I have for the extent period of time that this kind of activities has been going on ever since the situation with Brian Thompson happened in New York City.
Right.
Um, you know, I'm like, I'm small potatoes, right? In the grand scheme of things. But at the end, but also the flip side of that is you and I are very public figures in the space.
I feel like
Like
you're gonna paint a target on us by the end of this episode. Like easy boy, easy.
how many people that might be in the space, they, you know, are in the space, get out of the space. We see it all the time, right? They're like, this space is bad. This is space is not for me. They might
No,
know you and I more than they'd know a Brian Thompson,
that's true.
right? Like
Yeah,
so
that's
so you know, I mean, I guess I don't know. Like when I first saw it and I first was going through the article and kind of reading about it, it was like that's the first thing I thought of. I'm like, do I need security? No, not really. Doesn't mean I don't travel with security. You don't know, you listeners. You have no
I mean,
idea.
to me, the bigger conversation around this is the wealth disparity gap
Mhm.
is potentially the biggest that it's ever been in the history of the United States. For a long time, there was a period in the 1920s leading up to the Great Depression where that was the greatest wealth gap in the history because there was really almost no middle class back then. It
Mhm.
was essentially like the average person and then the extreme wealth, the people at the very top, the most wealthy people in America who, you know, really owned big business back then. And then when you know middle America got created, the wealth gap essentially, you know, there was kind of a spectrum. It wasn't just like poverty and rich. And now it's almost like we're kind of trending in the opposite direction. And so I think that
Mhm.
a lot of this mentality is coming from, and that's the part that's kind of scary. Like, you know, the idea that people are going to feel, I don't know, short, like they've been slighted because, you know, they're not making the same type of money that other people are making, which goes against, you know, almost all American principles, in my
Right.
opinion. Like
Agreed.
the whole point of this is like we all have a chance to make money. We all get the same type of opportunity here in America. Why should you feel slighted if someone else is more successful than you? You should feel motivated. You know, you
Yeah.
should be motivated by someone else's success.
I think there's two ways that somebody can look at somebody else's wins and accomplishments, and I think the first way is the right way, and that would be, wow, look at what this person did. You know, I never would have even thought this was possible in this way for this type of individual. Wow, that's so motivating. That's so inspiring. You know, I'm going to take a piece of this for myself in my own journey to kind of help propel me to where I need to go, right? That's the first reaction. The second reaction is this person being that successful takes away from my opportunity to be successful, right? Like their success almost like limits my own success, which is
Right.
so crazy and backwards in so many ways.
Right.
And but it seems like you're seeing more and more people kind of have that mentality. Where do you think that comes from?
I I think there's a sense of entitlement that
Mm,
um I don't know if I can even necessarily even begin to try to pinpoint where that came from, but it feels like there's a sense of entitlement of like, you know, I should have this same house that this person has. I should have the same car that this person has. I should have, the same education that this person has. And for whatever reason, that sentiment has continued to really grow. I don't know if social media is maybe partial to blame. A lot of people sharing what they have. It's easier than ever to see what other people, quote unquote, have or have not, right? It just takes a few scrolls, right? So maybe it's social media. Maybe that's, where a lot of this sentiment of entitlement and jealousy and, I should have this. If you have that, why don't I have that? Well, I'm going to hate you then, or I'm going to physically harm you. That's just ridiculous.
I blame the Joker movie. No, I'm just kidding.
Heath Ledger.
What's his name?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. Joaquin Phoenix. I blame Joaquin.
Yes.
Just kind of an interesting little thing, right? Especially with the whole temperature of everything in the industry. Another thing that happened over the weekend, right? So I went down to St. George to spend some time with the fam for about 3 or 4 days. And, very nice down there. 75 degrees during the day.
Was it really?
It was very nice.
It was 75? That's crazy.
Probably 70 to 75 during the day.
Literally that's summer weather for me, bro.
It was beautiful, right? As opposed to being up here where it's been relatively colder. And so, nice little getaway. But while I was down there, so I took a look for my dad at one of his long-term care policies. So, and I thought this was kind of interesting to kind of see kind of the trend of where these long-term care companies are. So, he bought this policy probably 15 years ago, maybe longer. Okay. And he bought it through John Hancock, right? So a lot of these, long-term care companies, a lot of them aren't offering products at all anymore in the long-term care space. If they are, they're dramatically different products than they were 15, 20 years ago. And from the outside looking in, a lot of these long-term care companies are just taking it in the shorts on these older long-term care policies. So
I'm sure
my parents have this policy. My dad asked if I, wanted to take a look at it and give him my thoughts on what I think he should do, as an insurance aficionado myself. Of course, my dad is a very smart insurance person as well, right? He was an agent for 30 years. But, he wanted to get my take. So I took a look at it. So the deal was, and I won't get into too much specifics on the policy, but, there was a 5-year plan, a very healthy benefit amount, right? Being like a daily benefit that would pay out monthly over the course of 5 years in a facility. 6-month elimination period. So you have to wait basically 6 months before it kicks in. 5% inflation protection rider. So the benefit basically increases by 5% each year to combat for inflation, which is pretty nice. And the insurance company is taking the premium from about $117 a month to about $200 a month, because they're losing it. They're losing their shorts, right?
Right. Is that inflation protection happening from day one of the policy, or not until it gets actually?
Till it's like through the elimination period.
Yeah.
That part I'm not 100% sure. I didn't get that into the weeds on that specific piece of it, but
yeah.
It's got to be one or the other. So the insurance company is offering basically one of 4 different choices to my parents. And so one of them is you can keep it the same and the premium will go from $117 to $200. Option A. Option B, you can have the premium be the same, keep it the same, that $117, and we will reduce your benefit by about 40%.
Am I getting a CE credit for this story? I feel like I'm going to end up with a CE credit by the end of this story.
Well, I am an approved CE provider with the state of Utah.
Okay. So I'm writing it in.
My newest CE has been approved. You've heard it here first on this podcast. Actually, I'm doing a CE this month, funny enough.
There you go.
But, which I haven't prepared it all for.
Yeah, of course you have. Of course.
So if you're going to be on there, bad kid doing his homework last minute. So anyway, option B, right? Premium stays level, benefit goes down.
Right.
And it goes down significantly by like 40%. So I'm like, out there, I wouldn't do that.
Can I guess what one of these options is going to be? Is there going to be a lump sum? Like, hey, here's your money. Go
like
away.
A buyout. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the next option. The next option is we'll give you like 20 grand and you cancel the policy.
Yeah.
We'll give it to you right now.
How much has he paid in though? Premium wise?
I don't know. 15, 20 years worth, like maybe 2,000 a year.
So it's like less than his premium back? The lump sum would it roughly be his?
I would say it's less.
I
mean, it's hard to say because I'm sure his premium has increased over the years from when he bought it.
Yeah, so that's true. It's probably close.
Probably close, if not. But I would estimate his premium. He's probably paid a little bit more over the course of the policy. So then there's another option that keeps everything the same, it keeps his premium the same, that 117, but it reduces the inflation protection down to 1.9%.
Interesting.
Then there's another option that basically adds like a co-insurance for the insurance company. It'll pay like 70% of the claim up to the daily benefit, but it reduces the benefit a little bit too. Like all these different crazy options the insurance companies kind of.
So there was 5 options for there was 5 options. Okay.
Yes. And so I looked it over, read it over, and this is all within like the legal rights of this policy for them to just be like, hey, I guess so.
We're changing the game here. Here's some options for you. That seems kind of wild.
And it's not so much that they're changing the game without any choice. Like they're raising the premium, which is within their right. And they're saying, if you don't want that to happen, here's some other things. I think that's where they get it, right? It's basically I think if they did it without any approval from the policyholder, that's where it gets a little
it's a soft push. Right. It's a soft push. This is actually really interesting though. So I'm curious what your official recommendation was.
So my recommendation was, and I bring this up to say, a lot of you guys that are watching this probably have clients that if they have long-term care policies that are older like that, I bet this is happening across the board.
Oh, I'm sure.
With a lot of these, because these insurance companies, their actuaries probably never could have even fathomed the level of inflation and change, economically that our country would have faced and everything like that.
How long people are living now, right?
Yeah, all of
it.
All the above. And so my recommendation was, I think if it was me, I'd just pay the extra premium. And I don't think I'd take any
true insurance guy.
I don't think I would take anything. I don't think I'd take anything that they're offering.
Pay the premium.
And then I was like, if you were to take one of the options, I think I'd take the reduced inflation protection to 1.9%.
And that was my first thought too. That was my first thought when you were sharing is that, but that's not even you're going to be essentially bleeding out slowly by 1 to 2, 3%. Inflation's so horrific. Even right now today, it's still way over 3%. I would say.
Yeah. So like, if it was me, I probably would take none of them and just keep the insurance policy the way it is and pay the extra premium. But if I was going to make any changes, I thought that was probably the least painful one to deal with, because some of the other options were like, reducing your daily benefit. You don't want to do that.
No, that defeats the whole purpose.
Yeah, the buyout, absolutely not.
Take the buyout, go to the casino, put it on black,
32
double
black.
You'll die. It hit. Let it ride.
If we hit
We
one
have enough to
again,
save the
we'd be
town.
rich and we'd save the town. Let it ride.
Let it ride.
What are they doing?
What was your dad's take on these options? What did he have anything he was leaning towards, like even before asking you or even after talking to you about it?
He didn't. I don't think he had anything in particular he was leaning towards, but he didn't want the premium to go up. He was bothered by
Course. Of
that.
course.
So he was trying to figure out which one of the options in terms of the premium staying level.
What was the daily benefit though?
This episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by the Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit. Guys, it is a fact that getting around other people that are chasing the same ambitions and destinations in their business as you is a great thing, and it can propel your business years ahead than not getting around people and networking and going to live events. The Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit is the premier event. Every year we hear year after year after year that it is the event that has the best content. So many events nowadays, they do a lot of pitching from the stage. They're really just there to sell you things. And if nothing more than that, they're just a bunch of vendors put together and they're just nothing but networking. There's no content. The summit is the best of both worlds, you guys. The summit puts together great, fantastic speakers from all ends of the industry, and also get you in a room with like-minded individuals from all over the country that are trying to build their business just like you. The summit this year is taking place in Salt Lake City from June 22nd to 24th at the Hilton Hotel. We still have tickets available. We'd love to have you come out for the event. We are over 50% sold out at the time of recording this, but get your ticket now while you can. This event will sell out, and we'd love to see you there in Salt Lake City. I'll tell you the whole benefit. It's about $410,000 over 5 years. So it's more of like a monthly benefit. It's more of like a monthly benefit.
But it's $410,000 over 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, taking the buyout would be chump change then, for sure. You'd be crazy to take the buyout because, and eventually the chances of you using that are pretty high, right? So you're pretty likely to use it unless you have something catastrophic happen, like you're going to use this benefit. I would pay the premium too. I honestly think, and yeah, I think the next best option, the co-insurance thing, sounds lame.
That was my least favorite of all of them.
Yeah,
right. Because so let's say your monthly benefit is $5,000. Let's say, I think it's more than that, but let's say it's $5,000 a month. Let's say you have a claim that's $4,000. Well, it's only going to pay 70% up to the $4,000. Now, if your claim was $8,000 and your benefit's $5,000, then they'll pay it all because it 70% exceeds it. But I'm just like, the insurance company's building in a co-insurance, whereas right now there is none.
Right.
They'll pay 100% up to the monthly benefit.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was just like thinking to myself, I'm like, I think
that's a great story. Premium. Yeah, that's a great story. I would pay the extra premium too, and I think the next best option would be the reduction in that inflation rider, because at the end of the day, that's not really affecting the actual payout of the policy. And yeah, you're losing. You said it's 5% going down to 1.9.
Yeah, that was one option. The 5% inflation protection rider going down to 1.9.
So you're losing like 3%. So you're definitely going to be losing to inflation at that point. But I guess you're gambling a bit there too. But 3% on 400K. Yeah, that's a very interesting situation though. And I am curious now how many other seniors are going through exactly that. There's got to be so many of these long-term care policies where they're just like, please God, take the buyout. Like, please take the buyout. We do not want to pay this.
It's one of those things where, like, a lot of you guys, and keep in mind, my parents are not that old. My parents are early 70s. You know what I mean? So like, you might think, oh, there's clients dealing with this in their 80s and things like that. Not necessarily, right? Like, Anybody that probably bought a long-term care policy 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they are probably facing these same kind of proposals from the insurance company. And my thought process on it really is like, what they're trying to do is they're trying to bully you. They're by raising the premium, because you got to think about it, 117 to 200. That's basically like what an 80% rate increase. It's insane.
Almost double. Yeah.
So what they're trying to do is they're trying to raise the premiums by an unreasonable amount, and they're trying to, their argument is, we can keep the premium the same, but we need you to give a little. And I mean, the interesting part about it to me will be like, what will the premium be long term? Like, do they keep coming back to the table and raising it another 30, 40, 50, 60% as we go? That'll be the interesting question. Is this a one-time thing they're going to do this, or is this a reoccurring thing every couple of years? That
I keep thinking about the legal side of this. Like, could there be a lawsuit? What if it does get to a point where someone can't afford the premiums, but they also want to keep the policy they signed up for?
Mm-hmm.
That's a situation where I feel like I could see a class action lawsuit taking place against one of these carriers. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see that happen, because I do think that we'll just continue to see, because again, the trend line is people are living longer, things have gotten more expensive. And like you said a moment ago, I don't think anyone could have potentially forecasted where we're at today.
Yeah.
There's no way. So the chance of a early 2000s or before long-term care policy not suffering huge losses like this, it's got to be just devastating. I bet the numbers are wild. If you could see their books, I bet it's huge losses. It's got to be.
All right, so we're negative 65 million in this bucket.
This quarter we lost 65 million.
This is a problem. What do we do about this? Maybe we can get some of these. Maybe we can get some of these suckers to drop their policy.
We need to start charging more right now.
The
shareholders. Think of the shareholders.
The long-term care product is so interesting to me because there's still a couple of guys out there that do a lot of business with it. Like, there's one guy I know of that does a lot of long-term care business, and that's like his thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for the most part, the long-term care product has become relatively obscure. People will buy one every now and then, but you don't see it very much. At least I certainly don't. If any of you that are watching, are humongous long-term care producers, we'd love to kind of hear your feedback in the chat or the comment section on anywhere the podcast will be broadcast. But it's interesting to kind of see the domino effect of all this, because you look at the amount of long-term care products that are on the market, it's substantially lower than how many were in the market 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And the ones that are on the market, they're really expensive.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, we don't want to offer this product, but if we do, we want you to pay through the nose to get it.
Yep.
It's just kind of interesting, to see a product line like that's, for the most part, been beaten down.
Would you say it's dying?
Would you say a funeral would be?
Would a funeral be needed? Because we might be able to do a BOGO on this. A buy one, get one. 2 caskets for the price of one. We'll bury long-term care with MedSup. They'll just
side
be
by
lowered together in the graves. Just...
Here lies long-term care. Beloved product decades ago.
The amount of money lost on this product is enormous.
$6,492,000,000.
World hunger could have been solved if we had just reallocated these premiums.
But anyway, I thought it was an interesting story, just kind of getting
I think that's very interesting.
A little bit of a glimpse, into some of these older long-term care policies and kind of like the state of where it appears that type of product line is. I know we want to get into the tax conversation.
We do.
Lot to talk about there. Before we do, though, let me talk to you guys about this episode's sponsor.
Yes.
And that is the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit, you guys. 7-Figure Medicare... The 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit has a gang sign. And amongst other things, it happens to also be, not only is it repping gang signs and is it hip with the young kids, it has the best content you're going to find all year round.
Well, if you weren't worried about your safety before this episode, by the end, you should be.
It happens to be the safest event you could go to all year round.
7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit, you guys.
Don't do that out on the streets, please, by the way, while you're out walking about in Salt Lake City. Seriously, guys, the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit is a little bit under 4 months away. We're 3 months basically, and 3 weeks, give or take, away from the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit. We haven't even announced all the speakers yet. We will over the next week. We'll get them all out along with a rough draft of a schedule. This is going to be the event of the year. This is the event you want to go to. Last year we had about 350 people there. We're anticipating at least that this year, if not a little bit more. And the content's going to be bananas, guys. If you're sick of paying a lot of money to go to an event, only to get basically sold to be going to a smaller event, it's more intimate, and you're like, where's the content? Where's the value that I was pitched, that I was promised when I spent all this money to come out here? You'll never get that at the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit. It is all about content. It's all about bringing value to you. So make sure you get your tickets today. They're very limited, and we hope to see you in Salt Lake City in June. All right, let's shift gears and transition into taxes. Okay, so title of this episode is How to Save as Much as Possible on Taxes. If you tune in late on the live, I gave my disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. I'm not doing it again. So it's there. It's there. If you want,
we can say anything. We can say literally anything. If you heard that disclaimer, we can now literally say anything we want, and it's not legal tax advice. So
taxes are optional.
The first thing we learned is S Corp stands for savings. The S in S Corp stands for savings. If you want to save on your taxes, file as an S Corp and you save money immediately, no matter what your situation is. I think we learned that this weekend. Did we not, Christian?
We did. It was, and I have been filing as an S Corp for, gosh, got to be 9 years now. And I never knew what the S stood for. Now I do.
I do want to talk about it. So I made a post this weekend because I was talking to our CPA. And this is my first time filing as an S Corp. And there were so many comments around S Corps. And, oh, you should have done that from the beginning, or I've been doing that for years, or, oh, it's the best thing. I think what gets lost in the weeds here is everyone's situation. And I'm telling you this as an individual who's been filing taxes now for like 20 years. My situation has radically evolved over time, where it has looked so different that there's no way you could say a blanket statement like that and it applies to everyone. So for those of you who are saying blanket statements, who are like, everyone should file like this, that is just simply not true. Because again, as an individual who's been paying into taxes now for 2 decades, there's been times where there's no way it would have even been beneficial. For sure.
For any of you that do toss those blanket statements out, I have one thing to say to you that I thought you'd know by now. Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
No. Darth Sidious over here. And there goes our last few viewers. Just dropping right up.
I'll do what I must. No, I think, I'll tell a quick story about the S Corp with me, right? So I did not actually file my corporation until might have been year 3 or 4. I can't remember of being in business. Prior to that, I filed everything individually. All my commissions went to me as an individual and everything like that. And by the time the last year came that I filed that way, I was getting railroaded on taxes. Like I paid more in taxes that last year. I remember going to lunch with my mother-in-law, and I was complaining because I just filed my taxes. I was complaining how much I owed. Compared to the scheme of things, compared to now, forget about it.
Forget about it. Hey, forget about it.
Forget about it. And but back then it was it was a lot of money to me. It was a couple 5 figures and things like that. And I remember my mother-in-law being like, "That's more than I make in a year on what you're paying, have to owe in taxes." I'm like, "Oh,
right,
fuck me," and and it was actually my dad that told me it might be time to file a corporation. And I'm like, corporation? I'm like, huh?
I'm a producer, Dad.
I'm like, I'm not a corporation. I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman. So I filed the corporation. And the way it was explained to me at that point in time by my tax person back then was like, it limits how much, it basically makes it to where, you pay yourself a salary, and the salary you're paying yourself is essentially what gets taxed on FICA, on Social Security, Medicare, that kind of thing. But anything you take out that's distribution, which usually the salary is a smaller amount than you're going to pay yourself in distribution.
Right.
That distribution is not taxed for FICA, Social Security, Medicare. There's other things, of course,
self-employment tax, right?
Yeah, but that was like a big thing at the time. It was like, okay, and I'll never forget. Like my tax person at the time was like, she's actually a client of ours today, by the way, Glenn. She was like, to be honest, Social Security, Medicare, it's not even going to be around when you're up, probably. She's like, so save all you can, pay as little into it as possible. I was like, is that the advice you're giving everyone? Maybe that's why it won't be around.
Medicare's not going to be around.
What?
What?
And so
what? That's my whole business.
But no, I mean the following year, I made more money and paid less in taxes than I did the previous year filing individually. There's other things as well, for sure, with the S corp, but like, it's definitely an interesting thing that kind of like shadows your revenue and that kind of thing in so many different ways. And yeah, it was a good decision for me at the time. And I think it saved us a lot of money as a company every year since then. So I'm a fan of it. The biggest thing is like that I see most people have trouble with it when they first file, and let's say they're completely alone in their businesses. They have to set up payroll, pay themselves a salary.
Yeah, it's a thing.
They might not be used to that, right? Like you might be used to, you're the only person in the company, but you have to structure everything and set up payroll as if you have other people in the company, because you have to pay yourself a salary. It's like, it's a real thing, something you have to do. It's part of the S corp.
Yes.
But of course, for us, it's not a big deal because that's something we would do anyway. But
right.
Yeah, no, I mean, you texted me over the weekend, I don't know how much we want to share on this, but like, basically, can we share? Is it?
Yeah, I don't care.
Is it? I won't say any numbers, but like, basically, the situation that we were dealing with is Glenn lives in Oregon, the company's in Utah.
Oregon.
Glenn lives on the Oregon Trail.
We're not sure where Oregon is, but I live there.
And Oregon has state taxes that
Oregon
I guess are greater than Utah, which I was like, whoa, I didn't know that.
Learn something every day.
Because of the S corp, because Glenn gets paid from the S corp, as do I. we were able to structure it. Our tax guy was able to kind of maneuver it in a way to where it can file based off of Utah state taxes instead of Oregon.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
saved
50%.
Five figures, right? Like multiple five figures. Just
figures,
state taxes.
50% on my state tax bill. Yes.
Let's go.
Not to mention the federal tax savings as well. So the S Corp saved a ton of money. Now, another thing we did that's worth talking about too, because, you know, there's lots of strategies on how you can save money on taxes. But another thing that we were really aggressive about last year, you guys, is we were trying to spend down at the end of the year, right? You hear people talk about this all the time, but if you just have cash sitting in your checking account and you just decide to hold on to all that cash going through January, you know, you have to really like wrap your mind around, you have this 12-month window. And so, you know, we were pretty aggressive about trying to spend down to reduce taxable income from last year. And I think that helped us a lot. That's probably another 5-figure savings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, easily. I mean, I remember when we were spending the money, we were like, boom, that's another 10K in taxes we just saved.
Nuke that. That's basically what we did. Which, you know, and I know both of us.
Oh, man. Can't wait for my 12-year-old to watch this episode. No way he watches one about taxes.
How much of it did he watch? I'm fascinated now.
Only like 5 or 6, just like the intro of a couple episodes.
What is this, Dad? He's like, my dad is so lame. I'm so embarrassed.
Hang on. My sister. So then my sister-in-law asked me. She goes, does anybody even watch it? And it was like a legitimate question. It wasn't like poking fun or making fun. It was just like, is anybody watching it? I'm like, no,
not really.
Not really. It's just Christian and I talking, and we just put it out there for the world.
But someday somebody will
someone stumbles across, you know, someone happens to watch a video. Like, here we are.
Your family's view on you and the business.
I got destroyed.
The best thing.
I almost called you crying this weekend. This is like destroyed this weekend.
I remember when we merged. We merged. Your family's like, so he's your boss now?
Yeah. Oh, you work for Christian Brindle now. I'm like, I guess so. Hey, boss.
I'm dying. I'm legitimately in tears.
To get back to this though.
Sorry.
So S Corp. Again, so this is the rule of thumb I've always heard with S Corp. I have no idea if this is true or not. Again, for the record, I've always heard that you have to be showing a net of about 300K or more for filing as an S Corp to really make a dent in your tax savings. So I don't know if that's true or not. It kind of made sense for my own personal income, I guess, because when I started to have a net greater than 300K, I definitely paid a lot more in taxes. Mm-hmm. And then when we filed as an S Corp, it seemed like I saved a lot more. So then we talked about spending down at the end of the year. So that's another strategy that you guys can utilize. Another one Christian was talking about state taxes being different. There are some states that have no state income tax. Mm-hmm. So you can also implement those types of strategies as well. You know how many people, once they start really making money in this industry, they move? Do you know how many times that happens?
I've thought about it many times. I moved to Florida.
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I did it. So and then I didn't stay, but
I loved watching the light bulb go off there for you're like, wait a second.
That's me.
That's me.
Like Florida's that way, Texas is that way, Wyoming's that way. Isn't Nevada that way? I think
Nevada, Washington is that way. Puerto Rico, I believe, has no state income tax. I think there's no Do you get out of federal taxes? You get out of federal That's what
you move
I
to
think.
London and you get out of federal tax.
It's true though. There's a rule. Here's another tax rule that I'm also aware of. Is the rule is if you're not in the, even if you're a U.S. citizen, even if you're generating money here, if you're not living in the U.S. for the majority of the year, I want to say it's like 50 weeks. There's some number. You don't have to pay any taxes. There is no income tax. That's another one that I heard, because you're technically living abroad.
So, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's some rule around that. If you're living outside the country for majority of the year, you don't have to pay income tax.
I feel like for most agents, the best way they can save money on taxes, and it's remarkable to me how often I'll talk to agents and they'll be like, I should do that, but I don't. Like, they're aware of it, but they just don't do it. And that's really keeping a good track on what you're spending on your business. Like,
yeah.
And it's things sometimes you don't even think might apply, right? Like, so for me, an example, some examples of that would be like, my cell phone bill. The business has been paid for my cell phone bill for many years because I use my phone for business. It's a write-off, right? Like, a lot of people probably just pay for their cell phone. They don't think too much of it. Anything you can think of that you use for business is a write-off. If you work out of your house, there's a square foot percentage of your home office that you can write off on what you spend for your house, utilities of the house, your mortgage payment, your rent payment, whatever it might be. Most agents just, I feel like, don't want to do the work of tracking it. So like prior 100%. To the merger, I did all that tracking myself.
Right.
And it got to the point where it was just crazy and it took so much of my time. But for many years, it wasn't a big deal. I would keep track here and there. I'd have an app on my phone that would track everything. Now we have bookkeepers that just track it all for us. We don't ever have to touch it anymore. So that's very nice. But like, even if you aren't in a place yet for that to make sense for you, I think, just really being very meticulous and keeping track of things. Like, if you are going to home appointments, you should be tracking your mileage.
100%.
Like, anything that you're spending out for your business, you need to take advantage of that, because it'll reduce, you can write it off on your taxes and reduce your taxable income, which might not seem like a lot in one or two purchases, but when you add everything up as a totality for the whole year, it can be substantially a lot.
One thing that was commented on when I made that post about the S Corp, one thing that came up in the comments that I 100% agree with, that I did not do as a business owner, is I did not do a great job, like Christian was just talking about right there. I did not do a great job of tracking a lot of this from the beginning. And I think if you set it up, whether you're scaling, at 7 figures or more, or if you're brand new, I think if you have things structured the right way from the beginning, you're going to save yourself so much time and headache, and ultimately save money on taxes. Tracking things like mileage on your vehicle, tracking anything that could be an expense. All of it. You're going to save so much time. Your CPA will love you as well, because you're not just like showing up with bank statements and you're like, I don't know, here you go. Like,
here you go.
Yeah, I spend money. Like Mr. Krabs or something.
Hello, I like money.
The United States Treasury does as well. They also like money. So,
yeah, I think, I think there's things that, if you really think about it, for most of you, some of you are probably really dialed in on this, and it might not be the case so much, but like, if you're really dialed in on it, you probably are having your boxes checked. But if you're not, and maybe, you're doing this here, you're doing that there are probably things you're paying for that you could basically say your business is paying for and write it off, that you use for business. Like, and it's stupid little things. Like, we get like printer paper from Costco sometimes for the office. We barely print things anymore. So we write off our Costco membership.
Boom.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just little things, but like, everything you can add to it, it's going to end up as a net positive for you.
For sure.
And a lot of times it's things that you're paying for anyway,
Yes.
you know?
100%.
And I think you can get real strategic with this kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Another one that we haven't talked about at all is retirement accounts. You know, SCPs, Roth IRAs, and again, you know, we've already made the disclaimer, but you know, we're not tax professionals here. I'm sure there's a lot we've already said on here that we would be eviscerated by a CPA. Like a CPA, I could see a CPA in the comments being like, "I'm calling the police," and try to get us arrested for giving tax advice, which we're not. This is entertainment only, but
entertainment purposes only.
I know SCPs specifically, which I believe stand for self-employed pensions, is again kind of a loophole that as a business owner we have available where you can put money away and reduce your taxable income, save money for the future, save money for retirement, invest money. Something that you could, another tool to put in your toolbox for sure.
Let's say you have a bunch of commission come in, you save it, you buy an investment property. Well, the appreciation of that, the depreciation of that, like depending on what's happening in the year, you know, that is significantly helpful on your taxes, right? Like real estate and rental properties and that kind of thing helps a great deal. I think there's so many ways that you can save on taxes, right? Like, and last year, like we really tried to get into it because as the Facebook group became aware, we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on taxes. And we still will probably to an extent, but like we're trying to find ways where we can kind of shave things off.
Right.
Like people were like, Christian is flexing. And I'm like, what a weird flex to me. You know, like
he's complaining.
Yeah,
he's complaining. Yeah, he's
complaining. I'm bitching to you guys about it. Like I'm like, woe is me. You know, like, you know, we spent in October like 150,000 on taxes or something like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, what if flex? And I'm like, I'm not happy about this. This isn't a joyous moment for me. Like
we literally paid the IRS over $100,000 in October last year.
It's just October.
I just remember thinking, it's because again, my first thought is all the things I could have done with that money, right? Isn't that's like the first thought when you're stroking a check out like that, or you're transferring that money? It's just like, man, I could have done so much if I had $100K right now. It's tough.
So and sometimes agents, like, or business people in general, business owners in general, they're like, I don't want to spend the money on my business. And like, I think I heard Grant Cardone say one time years ago, he's like, either you spend it on your business and invest in your business, or you give it to Uncle Sam.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And he's like, he's like, I would rather spend it on me than the government, who's probably just going to waste it any day of the week. And that was such a light bulb moment for me. Where it's like, either you spend it on you or you give it to Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
And it's very true. Like, I'll never forget that. This might get us in trouble to end the show.
Let's go. Saddle up, partner. We're on the road.
I'll never forget the first time Trump ran for president. And they're like investigating his taxes. And that's a whole like controversial thing. I'm not trying to get into that, but like,
right.
But anyway, like, I think he was doing like a debate or something like that. And they were like,
is this where he was called it like that's the sport? He called it like a sport. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that one as much, but I fully can picture
it came up so many times. I'm sure there's a lot of different quotes and stories around this, but
they asked him, like, on the debate stage, they're like we think you didn't pay any taxes and you're trying to hide that, and or something along those lines. And he's like, and he takes the mic and he's like, well, I didn't pay any taxes, and that's because I'm smart.
Right.
And I'm like, thank you. I'm like, thank you.
Well,
Like all these,
I think he was avoiding saying it for so long because of the public perception, right? That soundbite gets out there.
Mhm,
The president didn't pay any taxes. I'm not paying any taxes. But the
mhm.
reality is, a lot of very wealthy people don't pay any taxes. A lot of really big companies don't pay any taxes
I
because of
almost
strategies that they're implementing or losses they've had that they're offsetting.
There's two ways you could look at this. I'll never forget this. When I first started in the business, I was working a job. I've told this story before. This will be my final thoughts. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. Um, I was working at a job, and it was assisted living facility. And I was working that job in the evenings and then 12-hour shifts Saturday and Sunday in my first 6 months of being an agent. Then I was doing the agent thing, as they say, Monday through Friday. So there was this couple, pretty wealthy, moved from California, that I became pretty friendly with. And the husband in particular, because he sold life insurance. That was like what he did. So
Gotcha.
like me and him just connected and had a good relationship, but he was very pro taxes. So I got into a debate with him one time while I was cleaning
Interesting.
up the dining room, because that's what I
I
would
don't
do.
know if I've ever heard someone described as pro taxes before. But
Yeah,
that's
he was like,
interesting.
his whole argument was everyone needs to contribute and you should too, and you shouldn't try to get out of contributing. And I was like, because I just learned about, I think, write-offs and things like that. So I was super hyped on that. So I was talking to him about that, and he was like, "You shouldn't." He's like, "You should just not worry about it and just pay your taxes, contribute to society." And my argument is like, maybe some of you will disagree with this, but like for me, the money I pay in taxes almost never goes to what I think it should. Like someone that's 360 years old getting Social Security. That's
Right.
where my tax money's going.
Right. Well, who
Stupid
who
shit.
knows? Right.
Who
Who know
knows?
who
God
even
knows.
knows? Yeah, who even
So
knows where it ends up going? But
I look at it from a different perspective. I look at it like it's my duty as a citizen to utilize the laws that are available to me to pay as
100%.
little as possible.
Yes.
I look at it as like a duty and an obligation to me, to
Yes.
my company, to our employees, to my family, everything. And so, yeah, like that I wanted to just kind of share that as my final thought. Because
Yeah.
like there are people out there that they're like, they're like, everyone needs to pay their share. This is wrong. This topic of conversation.
Yeah. I think that's where this whole conversation with people get focused on the billionaire tax thing where it's like these billionaires aren't paying taxes. These billionaire corporations like Amazon, they're not paying taxes. They're not paying their fair share of taxes, or they might pay taxes one year and then the next year or two they don't pay any taxes. If it's all being done within the confines of the tax law, which is it's very complex, I think, and these are my final thoughts on today's episode, you guys. We've really shared some really basic concepts and strategies here. This is like tax 101 stuff that we've talked about. The sort of tax law that gets utilized for these giant corporations where they're offsetting losses and doing all sorts of things where they're moving money overseas and then bringing it back through, different countries to show the income in a different way to the federal government. There are so many legal tax loopholes. And I feel the exact same way that Christian does. If it's part of the law, why would you not want to utilize it?
Right.
It's a no-brainer. It's the same. And the irony of that life insurance producer feeling that way is a lot of times permanent life insurance gets utilized as a way to avoid paying taxes. People pay huge premiums into permanent life insurance and then they pull loans out of the policy and they'll utilize the loans as income, and you don't pay taxes on that because it's a loan. That's a whole nother strategy that we didn't even touch on, right? And this is what a lot of the mega wealthy do, is they get all of their income loaned to them, and all of their money is tied up into assets. And so at the end of the year, on paper, it can look like they didn't make anything.
Yep.
So again, if it's legal and if it's part of the law, the tax code here in the US, why wouldn't you do it? it's our duty. It's our duty as citizens, right? I love that, Christian. I love that. Yes, I'm on the team. I am on the team.
I love it. I concur with all of that. And
we should do a whole pod on the life insurance. We should get someone on who's an expert in the permanent life insurance, because that whole shit, the infinite banking strategy is what it's typically referred to as. I think that's fascinating, and I know some people who do it really well.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Guys,
appreciate you watching all the way to the end. This was an awesome episode. We could have kept going, probably another 30, 45 minutes. Easily. There's a lot of things we didn't get to, but hopefully this kind of gives you guys an idea of kind of the power of really taking this stuff seriously. Because I think a lot of it is that, I don't think it's rocket science necessarily in terms of what you can write off and things like that. But yeah, guys, appreciate you watching. Hope you enjoyed the episode. We'll be back on the next one with another amazing topic. We have a guest tomorrow, Mr. Nicholas Frumpkin. So we'll be talking about some life stuff, final expense stuff. So we're looking forward to that one. And we'll see you guys then. Appreciate you watching all the way to the end. And here's to your success and massive abundance. Thanks, everybody.